Welcome to H360 Health Talk. My name is Dave Duplay, and joining me this afternoon is a very exciting guest. His name is Mark Dillon. He is the founder and president of Biomed Sciences. Well, Mark started his company back in 1987. It focuses on wound care, scar management, and skin renewal. Very innovative technology. Mark, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Mark, 1987, take me back. You must have been, what, 5 years old then?
Almost.
Huh?
I was about 23, 24 when I started the company. And right out of college, it was basically my senior engineering thesis project that was the genesis of the technology that we developed ultimately into the line of products that we market.
Now, were you a biomedical engineer? What kind of engineer program were you in?
I was actually in the materials engineering program. I went to Alfred University in upstate New York. It's very well known for ceramic, both art and engineering. And initially I went for the art program. I do pottery as a hobby.
Is that right?
And since I was a kid, I do pottery on the potter's wheel. And I went to Alfred University to look at their ceramic art school, and I discovered that there was a whole field called ceramic engineering. And as I learned more about that, I became more intrigued. It involves technical materials, electronics, transistors, capacitors, resistors, computer chips, structural materials, bricks, concrete, refractory materials, furnace linings, tiles for the space shuttle, and also biomedical materials. Your teeth and your bones are ceramic. And so many of the materials that are used within the human body are made from ceramics. And that was the discipline that I ended up taking.
So what triggered the switch from art to ceramic engineering, not in art? I mean, I can understand the potter's wheel and what you're doing, but was there a class that you took that made you pause, or a professor? You thought, man, this could be game-changing. I think I'm going to make a shift here.
In all honesty, I took 3 years off between high school and college, and I grew up and decided I wanted to earn a living. And I would do pottery for fun instead of trying to make a living from it. And then I changed directions and went into the engineering field.
So when you're in the engineering field, you're taking these classes, you're learning about different types of materials, how they're used, consistency, and all of that. Is there something at the end of the curriculum, a paper that you have to write, or a thesis that leads into your graduation?
Right. It's traditional engineering. Unlike pottery, it was all physics and chemistry and calculus and those sorts of traditional engineering disciplines. And at the end of the program, it was required to pick a thesis topic. And ordinarily, a student would pick a topic off of a professor's list. They would put the list on their door. You would walk around the halls of the campus and pick a topic that you wanted to research. And in my case, I had asked a question one day in the classroom in biomaterials engineering. And I asked the professor a question, a fairly esoteric kind of question. Well, why isn't this material made this way, which would be better, wouldn't it? And his response was, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It was an implant material for dental and facial reconstruction applications. And I thought a better selection of ceramic materials and a polymer composite would work better. And I said, why isn't this being made this way? And he said, I don't know. So when it came time to pick a thesis topic, instead of picking a topic off of a list, I went to that professor and said, let me research that question. And he said, okay, Mark, well, what's your plan? And I said, well, I think if I mix Teflon and silicone together, which are not ceramic, they're polymers, but mix this into a ceramic composite, that this will give me the right kind of properties that would be ideal for this particular kind of application.
Now, are those two things, do they naturally go together? So is Teflon and silicon?
Teflon and silicone.
Silicone, okay.
Right, so those are two materials that have been around for generations.
Okay.
And my professor knew that they don't mix. They're like oil and water. So he said, well, go off and do your project. And he figured I'd write my paper about why it didn't work. You could still do A+ research on something that doesn't work.
It
right?
happens all the time,
It happens
right?
all the time,
Yeah.
right? But in my case, I didn't know any better. So I just went off and did it. And I came back to him and showed him what I had done, and he said, how did you do that? And I said, well, I came up with a couple of different ways of mixing Teflon and silicone, and this is the properties that I got. And he said, Mark, I think you can get a patent on that. So next
Now,
thing.
where were you doing this mixing? Was this in your dorm room? Was this in
the
home?
laboratories
In
on
the lab?
campus, which led to an interesting little complication at one point because once the dean of the university caught wind that I was filing a patent on my thesis project,
Using
I got
schools,
equipment and facilities.
Yeah.
I got called into the dean's office, and my professor came with me, and he said, well, Mark, you did this on university property, university equipment, and technically the invention belongs to the university. And my professor stood up for me and said, no, this was Mark's idea. He came up with it on his own, did it. And
wasn't one of the things on the list.
It wasn't on the list,
yeah.
Original idea. And so the dean kind of hummed and hawed a little bit, and they said, okay, you can keep your patent, go become a rich alumni, and don't forget about us.
There you go.
And so
Win-win.
that's how I left the university with a diploma and my first patent.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided to try the American entrepreneur thing and formed the corporation and sold stock and raised capital and took it from there.
Now, when we go off camera, I'm going to ask you what your parents said to you to make you grow up in 3 years, going from spinning pottery on a wheel to becoming an entrepreneur and inventor.
Paying your own bills, car insurance, things like that.
I'm going to apply some of those, but like I say, we'll take that offline.
Okay, no problem.
So you exit university, you have your degree, you file a patent, you're 24 years old. And you start Biomed Sciences. And when you started it, did you have in the back of your mind when, as you're going through this process, you're saying, hey, I have been successful in mixing silicon and Teflon, and I've got this new thing. Were your wheels starting to already turn about, I think I can apply it in this area of medicine or this area of science, and you launched the company around that idea? Or did you say, I have something here, not really sure the application yet, but it seems interesting enough that I think we'll figure it out as we go along?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It was a little bit more of the latter case. As I mentioned, the project I was working on was an implant material for facial and dental reconstructive applications. And those were the first 2 patents that were issued. But I very quickly realized with my initial discussions with FDA that it was going to be a very difficult process getting that product into the marketplace. It was going to be tens of millions of dollars in implant material, the testing that would be required, and everything that was involved with it. And as sort of a kind of side experiment, when I was working on this implant material, I developed just the basic Silon material and looked at it, felt it, touched it, and said, this stuff is just like skin. And I'll show you a sample of that to give you an idea of what I mean.
So Mark, as you're getting that prepared for me to take a look at, so Silon, what is that something that you came up with, or is that an already known property?
Silicone and Teflon, I just blended the 2 words together and trademarked it.
Kind of like healthcare and video, you get healthio.
There you go.
Amazing, right?
Right.
A couple of glasses of wine later, you have it. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is a sample of the basic Silon material in its simplest form. And you can see it's a very thin membrane. It's very conforming, very elastic, but it's also very non-adherent. It never adheres more than this.
Hairs
it's not like a Band-Aid. It doesn't stick like that. And so I made a piece of this.
People can see that, but it's almost, you probably can't see it. I mean, it's actually looks like your skin. It feels like skin to me.
It functions as an artificial epidermis, essentially, the upper layer of the skin. So I had made a sample of this material and then put it aside and got back to my project. But then when I kind of hit that brick wall with FDA and realized the whole implant route was going to be a very big challenge, it was going to require a lot of financing, I thought, well, what about that skin material? Maybe I can take that route instead.
Yep.
And so the response from FDA was, well, this is a medical device, it's not implantable, there's a much shorter process to go through, you need to do they explained to me what sort of testing was required, and so I chose that route and went down that path. So what we do today is all along the lines of wound care, scar management, burn treatment, cosmetic surgery, things of that type, and has nothing to do with ceramics whatsoever.
Mark, thanks so much again for joining us. The work that you're doing is incredible. I can't wait to continue the conversation, and I can't wait for you to join us next week.
David, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.